Yo,
What's
what's
going on,
up?
guys?
Welcome to the Trying to Get Jack podcast. Today we have a fun guest here, which we will introduce in a second. But quick background how we met him is through Prescript. So if you guys don't know Prescript, it's like a education platform online, stuff like that. And I'll give a little shout out to Prescript. I do all the time anyways, but I think I'm always wearing the t-shirts. I'm surprised I'm not wearing it right now, but it's one of those things when I left accounting, one of the biggest things I lacked was like confidence in myself of like, yo, am I gonna be able to train people? Because like you can get yourself jacked, but like taking somebody else's like things and you're like, hey, I can help you too. It's a little bit of like a trust game, right? The person has to trust you and you have to trust yourself. So I took like a bunch of PT courses, but Prescript was one of those where they had a community aspect of it, where Eric was in one of the labs, all the labs most of the time, and then the technique lab, and then he was just dropping knowledge constantly, and it's just like it was cool to see how much. So sometimes people get intimidated by the fitness game, right? So when you see somebody that's like 10, 12 years down the line, and all these people are just trying to help, I'm like, yo, this is sick. Everyone's just actually here just to help. So that helped me gain a lot of confidence. Obviously, the knowledge from the Prescript courses helped as well. But I think the community was probably one of the biggest drivers. And Eric is one of those, smart dudes. He's gonna drop some jack knowledge on us today. But I'll let him do a nicer intro of himself. Feel like what's your background? What's the sauce?
Let's try to make it as awkward as humanly possible.
That's it.
Yeah, we actually had a just a literal one-to-one consult call this morning, and it was essentially what you described. Like I've been doing this for a long time,
Yeah.
and the guy that I was speaking to, he just needed reassurance more than almost anything else. Like you're doing it right. Let me tell you, 10 years in the future of you, you're still going to be doing it right.
Yeah.
So hello friends, Eric Bugera of Prescript. I don't know, notoriety. I have my own company, but most people probably have gained exposure through to my content through Prescript. I have a master's degree in kinesiology, a second undergrad in nutritional sciences, and I've been a personal trainer probably for about 13, 14 years now.
Nice.
Um, the large majority of that was in person through commercial gym settings, Good Life Fitness if you're in Canada. And then I made the jump during the pandemic to the online space and haven't really looked back since. In getting into the online independent space, that's where I'd already been kind of networking with Prescript and Jordan Shallow, Jordan Junta around the time where I went independent, and having the freedom to sort of move within my own company at this point. That's when we started to like formalize it. I started to work with them on a more consistent basis, running it, or at least participating in a ton of their labs, and then creating my own, being the technique lab, where we essentially break down individual training footage of community members and use it as a practical application portion of the courses. So you've learned all you're going to learn in the actual materials. Let's now see it in real time and see if we can actually apply it rep over rep, set over set, person over person to really expedite how much you actually took from the courses and can apply in a real life setting, but in like a safe environment where it's not high pressure and like, oh shit, am I going to fuck up my words, or am I going to like hurt someone or miss something? It's like, no, we get a nice nerfed setting to actually practice our skills. Beyond that, you've been doing this so
Yeah.
long. It's like, I don't know what are the key points. I guess one of the more relevant to trying to get jacked. I also developed the Prescript hypertrophy course, which is run a couple times now. It's kind of on the back burners. They're really modeling like the course curriculum around PSL 1, 2, and 3, and trying to fit in the others as it so we don't cannibalize our course intakes like we did last time. But that's probably why I'm a relevant guest for the audience.
Hell yeah.
We did the hypertrophy course. We also studied hypertrophy pretty in depth in the master's degree. So that's the, I don't know, 30 seconds to one
Yeah.
minute version of who I am.
That was great. If someone wants more information, just go like look up ericbugera.com or Instagram. Instagram is probably way better, even though he doesn't post content. There's a lot of content that it's like all quality stuff. It's like
Yeah.
if Eric is gonna talk, you're like, oh shit, yeah, like I should probably read this, and then you'll
We,
be,
we listen or we read.
yeah,
We, we read every time we post.
every time. And we were just talking about a couple topics before, but I think we had a good segue right here. So you were talking about hypertrophy, so that's a big word for us, man. What is hypertrophy, bro? What does that mean?
Hypertrophy is like the pretentious way of gaining muscle or
Sick.
stating that you're gaining muscle.
Yeah.
It's essentially taking what muscle you have and trying to make it as large as humanly possible.
Yeah. Okay.
Through whatever means necessary. No, it's pretty much just what most people are probably going to the gym to work out for. If you're a casual gym goer, if you're just
Yeah.
trying to improve the way you look, you feel, you're doing hypertrophy training, and it's just Sets, reps, exercise selection designed around just getting bigger.
It's funny you used I don't even know that big word before
Potential.
hypertrophy. Yeah, that one, right? Uh, so when I joined Prescript initially, right? And I remember I dived in PSL 1 and think about it like this. I had no training background, no kin background. It was just straight accounting. And like I knew how to like pump weights. And then obviously like YouTube and like YouTube influencers, right? Like how they worked out macros and stuff. And right away I dived into Prescript level 1 and they're like, mobility, stability, strength, and all these like thoracic extension, thoracic mobility, and like a lot of like stability, like or like resist able to ability to resist force. And like I started like using these terms training my clients. I had like 4 clients. I didn't have many clients, right? And they were like, "Yo, bro, what are you talking about?" I'm like, "Yo, like thoracic extension, bro. Like, like upper back, bro, upper back mobility." And like I didn't even know what it meant, right? Properly.
Yeah.
I still actually kind of don't. I just know like it kind of do, but kind of don't. So I remember like I used so many terms for the first year and a bit, and I actually started making some content on it too. I remember making like thread the needle, and I'm instead of being like, "Yo, bro, like if you want your upper back to have more mobility, do thread the needle." I'd be like, "Hey guys, if you want thoracic extension or rotation, do thread the needle," right? And I realized over time, I'm just like using these words. I have no idea what they mean. And just like again, the fact that you simplified it too, that's the reason. Actually, we should probably introduce Manraj.
What's up, bro? How's everything?
It's been fantastic. Glad you could join us.
Awesome,
Yeah,
awesome. I see you have the clear mic. We're not at that level yet. It's like
Hey
very
man,
crisp.
I put respect on fucking trying to get jacked. I bring everything.
Yeah, we gotta upgrade soon. No worries. For the second one, when you come back, we'll upgrade.
yeah,
Oh,
it's gonna
I'm
be a
fucking
lot.
already coming back. I'm into it. Uh, yeah, we had a time period with Prescript, and it's like from the trainer to client perspective, you need a
Yeah,
client that's willing to roast you to your face when you're sounding, the word was pretentious, when you're sounding like a douchebag, like a sciencey douche. You need a client that's willing to just roast you to your face, being like, what are
yeah,
you even saying right now? Like, how does this apply to sets, reps, my position, stuff like that? Stop saying the
yeah,
words, give me something I can actually use. And that was what we had to start doing as Prescript started to get bigger and bigger and more team members came on. And we started to realize that people were like they were directly parroting. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's like, good, we're teaching you skills, we're teaching you information. We want you to then use it and apply it, obviously. But they were starting to implement it and create their own content that was essentially a copy paste of what we said instead of translating it in a way that is applicable to them or their audience.
yeah,
And there's a couple of personal friends that I have that have gone through the Prescript system, which made it even easier to be that guy then to
yeah,
roast them to their face. And what was it, Mahan? If anybody is a
yeah.
follower of his as well, he said force absorption one time in a very recent lab, and I immediately roasted the shit out of him to his face. I was just like, I'm a new client. What does that even mean? Also, we should bridge this gap. Am I swearing or am I not swearing on this podcast?
Bro.
You're good. You're good. You're good.
Yeah, because it was one of the most irritating things for me as the now I'm kind of the knowledge translation guy. Okay, we have a broader audience now, and their audience is even more broad. Let's take these high level concepts that are designed to make you guys stand above and like head and shoulders above and beyond all the other trainers that may be out there that haven't taken the course yet. But if you can't actually say what you are learning in simple terms, like force absorb, like, yo, you're talking about the eccentric. Stop saying those words. Or if when you're challenged, to be able to say the other words that make more sense. Because
Yeah,
even eccentric, I don't know, maybe that works for
stretch.
someone. The
Yeah,
lowering portion, how does that do for you? Like being able to break it down. So there was a time period where we had to start, all right, who am I friends with on the internet? I'm going to DM them and be like, hey, man, what does this post even fucking mean? And
yeah,
it's like the opposite of what people, because we noticed that a lot of people would get super neurotic, super self-conscious about I'm going to make content, and then what is Jordan Shallow going to think about it if I don't say
hmm
the exact words that he would have said? He's going to come dunk on me. It's like, no, we're going to dunk on you if you can't explain what we said to the level that is applicable to your audience. So that was a very important realization.
yeah. I honestly, yeah, I got lucky in a sense because I didn't have many clients, right? So I
Yeah.
started rewatching my own videos that I was making, and I'm talking about like fatigue management, and I still like Manraj always like jokes with us because we sometimes talk about it. It's like,
So
use some
this
load
guy,
management.
this
Yeah,
guy's life revolves around working out, and he still has fatigue management. It's crazy to me. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So like using terms like that, or like, just things like in general, like stability, mobility, and like even like with those words, stability, mobility, like just gets thrown out a lot. And like I would throw it out all the time in the start. And I'm like, people don't even know what that actually means. I don't even know properly what it means, right? But it makes you sound smarter. So you think like clients will get attracted to you because yo, this guy's smart. But then over time, what I realized was like people that come, they're like, yo, bro, like you're just really relatable. That's why I want to work with you. I'm like, oh, so you don't really give a shit if I say like big words? Like, nah, bro. I just like you're kind of jacked and like you talk like me. I'm like, okay, sick. So it literally was like a transition because I was like, yo, that's how it worked, and it makes sense because that's how I would trust somebody. If someone's relatable, I'll be like, yo, sick. Let's
And
work
that's the
together.
truly like that's the formula is know as much as you possibly can, but know how
Yeah,
to filter it. Filter
yeah,
it in a way that actually is useful to the person.
yeah,
Otherwise, you just talk to yourself. You're just in a session, just like reciting your knowledge to yourself over and over.
yeah, yeah. I remember using ribcage so many times. I'm like, yo, do something with your ribcage. Like, fuck, I don't even know where my ribcage is sometimes. I said that to a client, right? He's going to do a shoulder issue. I'm like, hey, bro, actually just your rib. It's just kind of on the side. So it's funny, but yeah, let's talk about getting jacked, right? But I think
Let's
this
go.
is relatable. So let's bring it back to hypertrophy, aka building muscle, right? Actually, fuck, topics are going all over my mind. So before that, so I don't want to forget this question. Yeah, I'm on like so much caffeine right now.
No.
Uh, you can tell? Okay. So I want to talk about adherence. Like one of the biggest
Yeah.
things I find is like I even struggle with this myself sometimes. I'll have really, really sick momentum going and like gains are sick, everything is wicked, everything is proper. But then you're almost like scared of breaking that momentum, right? So you never want to like get off plan. Or the other story is someone like a client, they might be killing it, getting results, and then like something happens and they completely fall off and they're not adhering to the plan anymore, right? So in your like 15 whatever years of experience and so many people that you work with, what are some like pillars to like making someone just stay consistent or like stick to a plan?
Yeah. It's funny because I was gonna start with, well, my general demographic historically is like Good Life Fitness clients, like the
Mm,
average person coming through. And I've obviously trained people of all levels, all ages, all whatever, but the vast majority are going to be in this sort of general population, probably 20 to 60 age range, just trying to look better, feel better, not have pain. And you start to really realize quite quickly that all of the top level education you can get, and this is even before any sort of prescript sort of curriculum sort of ideas, even just me walking into my first gig with an undergraduate in kinesiology, you think you know everything. And now I'm going to apply everything to everyone. I'm going to be, again, head and shoulders above everybody around me. None of it matters really if like the person isn't going to consistently do stuff, because the audience that we're particularly serving in say a commercial gym setting are people that don't do anything prior to engaging with you on the first day. They're literally sedentary, or they're on again off again so frequently that they might as well be sedentary. So one of the core concepts of all training adaptations, if you're gaining muscle, if you're getting stronger, if you're getting faster, whatever, is the idea of progressive overload, which essentially means what you did last time, once your body has adapted to it, you need something that is proportionally more difficult so that your body has another reason to get better. In hypertrophy, it's usually like people will like default to either more weight, more sets, like in some capacity, and there's more to it than that, like in general. But as a good rule of thumb, cool, let's go that way. Um, but people would start to get really antsy over, am I doing the absolute most correct thing possible? Not realizing that if I design the most idealized program, but the person hates every single exercise within it, they're not going to do it. And it's the equivalent of if they weren't training at all over again. So progressive overload as a concept for us trainers for applying this to clients, it literally is, well, what was the starting block? Was it they were already midway through training in their life and they came to you to make it better? Did they start from completely sedentary and you're trying to give them something to get started with? Because the context really dictates how much you need to go down those rabbit holes. So if someone is just starting and I'm like, all right, we're going to do 3 sets of 15 on insert some whatever the internet would call the dumbest exercise in existence, but they used to do nothing, they're making gains. Like they have now given their body a challenge that it needs to adapt to, and you just roll from there. So that's a big one, is that adherence is almost a one-to-one direct correlation with, do they enjoy what they're doing? Because even like the most staunch, stoic, fighting my demons post that you'll see on the internet, like there's a finite amount of time someone can go through the internal struggle of like, I'm doing this because my goals supersede my enjoyment. Nah, man. If you hate everything for a long enough period of time, you will break. You're not like that guy or that girl. You're going to break eventually. Now scale it to the average person, and their tolerance for things that they don't like is way lower because they're not as motivated, not as bought in already. So just doing the things that people like to an extent that is challenging enough that they actually see progress, you're winning. And this is very important. This last point, I'll hand back the mic, is very important. Don't weaponize what they like. That used to be like a gag or like something that I even used to say. It's like, yeah, I'm going to take what you like and I'm going to use it. So I'm going to make you hate it. Like not literally, but like I'm going to make it the most effective form of what it is. Like, no. Use what they love as a form of motivation to keep doing stuff in general. Don't just be like, all right, cool. You love the leg press. Cool. We're doing sets of 25 until you puke with 1 minute rest. We're going to do this as effectively as possible, even though that's not effective. But you get my point. It's like use what they like to actually sustain their motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
That's a point. I think one of the biggest things when it comes to training, or like when you first think about a personal trainer, is like this person's gonna run me into the ground and I don't care how it gets done, right? And like you come across clients, like I remember training people for the first couple of sessions, they're like, that's it. I'm like, dude, I don't even know what you can handle yet. I don't know what you're capable of. I'm not gonna, I know you love Bulgarian split squats, but I'm not gonna put you through triple drops at a Bulgarian split squats just because I want to mess you up. And I think that's a big thing that people get into. It's like when they get into a coaching experience or training experience, like, oh shit, this person's gonna run me through a wall. It's like if you're someone that's been running themselves through the wall the entire time, that's probably not the first thing you need to be doing. You probably do need to take a step back, right? So understanding obviously the context and the environment and where that person's coming from and meeting them at that position is definitely a huge thing in making that long-term sustainability a big key for them.
That's a really salient point. Like it's still within my career this deep, where if it's a one-off consultation or the first meeting, I still have to be very careful with how hard I push people, despite what they bring to the table. Like they tell me, "Oh, I have this much experience." Do you? Because we're going to do things right. We're going to do things well, and then you're going to go and puke almost immediately. I have memories from the commercial gym setting is typically a shotgun. If you do a consultation, it's like 20 minutes at a table where you do a meet and greet and sort of get a loose idea of what they need or what they want. Then you do a shotgun workout to essentially job interview for them, and then you present them with what their training options might be and try to seal the deal. The amount of times I have done things so well because I know exercise science, know energy systems. I know how to murk someone as fast as humanly possible. And then they actually need to go puke. And I'm like, well, that's not great. That's a negative experience that's not going to go well in the win column for them. So most people, they a lot of the times will think that they're more equipped than they are. And then you give them something that's actually really refined and really in depth on how it should go, and they die. Or the same thing as what you said. I even my most recent sign up, I can feel it. There's the aura of that's it. It's like, yes, because you told me your initial goal was insert, I need to get out of pain or I need to move better. I've never seen you move. We're going to do a couple of things in your first block that will drive adaptation, but more so than that, let me see how you move and let me get you out of pain. Oh, and then I'll crush your soul if that's what you want. Like, don't worry, it's coming. But you still, even this deep in a career, you still have those thoughts or you still have those experiences.
Mhm.
Manraj, you were at Good Life for a minute. It's good.
Yeah, I worked at Good Life for a very, very long time. So about 4 years. Even when I was managing my trainers, I would just tell them like, bro, just have fun. Like
Yeah.
people don't necessarily care about the workout. And like the easiest way to make a workout hard is just like 4 second negative, like body weight squats. Like that'll mess up the average person
Mhm.
if you do like 12 reps. But even that, I never like killed anyone. It was just I used to do like squats, seated rows, and like some ball slams or like some high knees, and people get messed up from that, right? In like the consultation. But yeah, that's what I've realized because when you kill someone at the like at the in the workout, the trainer's like, oh, like it was such a good workout, but you can't even like price present to the person because they're so
Yeah.
messed up, right? So it's like no one would come back like knowing like that's how they're gonna feel every single time, right? So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, adherence. Even the Good Life workouts, like if you look at what all my trainers did, no one did anything crazy. It was all easy workouts. And the people that always got the best results, like, were the moms that like loved coming, or like the guys that loved coming, have a little bit of therapy session, talk about their life, and do some sled pushes, seated rows, and very, very simple stuff, right?
Yeah, like you're as the trainer, and this is a very important point that you brought up. It's like you're the quality control, but it's not really about what you think of the workout necessarily. It's definitely not what another trainer next to you or on the internet thinks about the workout that you're providing. It's what the client thinks about it and how their experience is that really will drive adherence and then ultimately drive the actual results. And I had a similar experience as you at My Good Life. The people that showed up the most got the most results. And we're talking anywhere from like, I'm out of pain, I gained all this strength to hit my PRs, or I lost 100 or 200 pounds. It wasn't crazy workouts. I smiled when you said the med ball slam or the high knees, because that's just like, oh yeah, we're gonna go push around a sled for a while. It's something that is challenging to them, and that's the experience that they need.
What are Manraj, what
Even
are you
with
gonna say?
that, like, once people get those initial wins, then you could get them bought in on the diet aspect as well. Right? They're like, you're just like, eat more protein. Let's go for a walk. And like,
Yeah,
people will get results like insane. They'll lose like 20, 30 pounds doing like nothing. And then there's people that follow, I'm sure all of us, they're doing like single arm lat pull downs on one knee, and they're like struggling to lose like 5 pounds, 10 pounds. It's because the
yeah.
adherence is not there, right? They're just overcomplicating.
So this actually leads into the point. I guess you already mentioned one of them. It was like getting quick wins at the start will create that momentum and adherence long term, right? So what are some? Obviously, one of them is don't keep complicate things, keep them simple, and just make them feel like okay, they're doing some sort of things that are right and they're making progress in the direction, and then they get bought into the process, and you can keep adding some layers to it, and then they build long term progress, right? So besides like initial momentum, initial wins. Anything else you guys noticed in your clients who like adhere to the plan for a really long time? Was there any other traits?
Yeah, it's a lot of the times it's going to be like listening to their preferences, both in terms of exercise selection that we kind of touched on,
Yeah,
but in terms of almost the formatting. And this is the challenge that I always pose to people that push back on. One of the big things in the industry became not having like an arbitrary deload or not necessarily changing the program completely after every 4 weeks or 6 weeks or even 8 weeks or whatever you're going to do because adaptation from hypertrophy, especially from strength, it really does benefit in a lot of ways from a sustained same program because you get better at it. You're able to execute things better, push yourself harder, the whole thing. But again, it's a balancing act of what is the net value to the client in front of you. If they get bored of something within 4 to 6 weeks and their effort level drops off because of it, or their consistency, their frequency of training drops off because of it, that's a bigger net loss than it is a net win of you keeping them on the same program for a long period of time. So even within my online programming now, I might have 30% of my clients that will be on the same exact training program with modified variables here and there for 6 to 8 weeks. The vast majority, they hit that 4 week mark and they transition to something. And it could be as simple as like a dumbbell lateral raise to a cable, like just some different look to give them something that feels like it's a change so they stay engaged. Um, but the point there is that running in the background at all times, you as the trainer are trying to also build a client that's capable of making these transitions without a huge drop off in performance, because that is a legitimate issue. Like if you're transitioning exercises very frequently like that, like every 4 weeks or so, there is a skill component to training across the board. And if I hand like Kags a set of dumbbells, and then 4 weeks from then it's like a cable or a machine, or even that progression sounds like it should actually be getting easier. It is different still. And so his nervous system, his practice, his skill is super fine tuned for one. And even though it's the same muscle group, same general pattern, it'll take a little bit of time for him to like balance it, get the movement pattern right, and that kind of stuff. But over the course of time, that transition gets dramatically reduced. Like you funnel people to in the background of whatever program you're running, you're also slowly, like subtly building up those skills such that, okay, even if I'm going to transition you every 4 weeks into a slightly different program to help with your adherence or your enjoyment, like I said, I hand a client a machine, I hand them a set of cables, I hand them a set of dumbbells on an incline bench. That's the general exercise. That's like 2 sets deep, and they're basically off to the races after a long enough period of time because I've built their skill, I've built their awareness around those movements enough that that transition isn't going to tank like the first week or two of their training.
damn. I like that. That's something I've always like almost stayed away from a little bit. Where like transitioning workouts too quick.
Yeah.
And this is where like I've gotten training from like James Mack, and I've seen how he programs. I've seen how Bax programs. Bax is like again, I'm probably within the 30% clients, and I'm sure
Yeah.
us three we're all probably in that 30% where we just stick to one thing, and we know this is how gains are made long term because we can adhere to it. But majority of the people, and this is what I learned, like Mac used to talk about the same thing. Instead of having like a deload week, you just have a transition week into like a new program. And that's where you change up a few exercises. The person gets excited again. It's like, oh damn, new block, new exercises, and you have that excitement again consistently until they get to a point where like they're like, hey, I kind of like this, and you kind of run something for a longer period of time, right? So that's so how does that relate to like how much of a percentage difference you think it has on like hypertrophy per se on gaining muscle? Like what is the what's the sauce here? So say if I change my program every 4 weeks, right? Am I like adherence aside, right? Because that's obviously gonna have the most net benefit if someone's gonna stick to something. But say adherence aside, we adhere to a program, but I still change it every 4 to 5 weeks because I'm a gym bro and I'm like, yo, I get bored,
Yeah.
right? How is that affecting my progress in the gym of building muscle and getting as jacked as possible?
For most people, I would argue if you've been training for 6 months, even to a year to longer, which ideally most people are going to if they have real gains and real goals and stuff like that.
Right.
Not a hell of a lot. I think the bigger rock, like the transitioning of programs that frequently, is not the biggest deal in the world because the muscle is trying to. What's going to drive your muscle growth is a stimulated muscle, but then on the flip side of that, the ability to recover between sessions, the ability to recover between those moments of stimulus. So at the end of the day, the muscle tension, like the actual effort that is experienced by that tissue within that workout, if you can just hand you whatever, and if you're skilled enough, experienced enough, so hence like 6 months to a year or deeper into your training, if you can, even if it's a little like sloppy, whatever, you see it all the time. People like just take it to the like send it, take it to the woodshed to failure. If your technique is off a little bit, it's not like you lost all tension on that muscle. The unifying thing across all these modalities is, are you getting close enough to failure that the muscle is experiencing an actual adequate level of stimulus? Cool. Train for 6 months, train for a year, train for whatever. I personally have been training since I was 12. I'm 35 now, whatever the amount of years that is, 23. It started with dumbbells and now it's an actual gym, whatever. I walk in at my state of fatigue and general irritation with having to do stuff that isn't sleeping. I walk in, I'm like, all right, there's my machine. I am that guy that'll do, like, I have a preset thing in my brain. That is the program I'm on probably for the next 12 months because I just can't be bothered to think. But I walk in and it's taken. The A1, my first machine taken, sick. I don't care. I'm literally going to use the one next to it. It's a different brand or it's a slightly different angle. I don't care because I'm going to do a chest press version and it's going to be close enough for what I need it to be. And I'm just going to try real hard and I'll get some semblance of at least a maintenance value of stimulus for my goals right now. But the average person on the tail end, like there's a ton of focus on training, a ton of focus on the nitty gritty, like program design, angles of attack, regional hypertrophy. Am I getting enough reps in reserve or too many and all the things? Rest periods, cool. There's a lot of focus on that. Are you actually eating enough protein, first of all, for the building blocks to actually grow? Are you getting enough calories on a consistent basis to have appreciable growth over time? And are you sleeping? And are you, which is becoming more and more salient in everybody's life, are you stressed? Calm down. Everybody relax because it is impacting your sleep, which then impacts your gains. And it's a whole snowball effect. So we as trainers have this great level of control over at least a program if it's in the online setting, if not the actual full workout itself if we're training in person. We can almost guarantee that stimulus is present for that person. But the net like growth proposition, are they actually eating enough for their goal? Are they willing to put on a little bit of body fat? And I don't mean getting fat, I mean put on a little bit of body fat to make sure you're in a growth setting. Are they sleeping enough? Are they managing stress? Those are the bigger intangibles that people need to focus on. Because if we distill this back down to say the average client, and I honestly extrapolate this to like everybody, we're all average. We all struggle with the same kind of like barriers to our own success. If you're training your ass off, but you're not getting those other things, it doesn't matter how far off optimal your training was. If you aren't eating for the goal and you're not getting enough like quality recovery, those things will undercut your results harder in every way, shape, and form than if like, I was supposed to do my machine chest press for 12 consecutive weeks because gains. And this week, YOLO, I did the cable version because some guy is doing like a quadruple giant set across the entire gym for 45 minutes on the same circuit. Cool. I'm just going to go over there and be out of here in 5 minutes. Like the trade off is insignificant relative to all the other things.
Well, I guess yeah, go ahead, Kex.
I was gonna say, so that's what works. That's what like the big thing is that they're training closer to failure. They're getting their protein in. They're recovering properly. XYZ. Why do you think so many people go in the gym and don't see progress? So I'm assuming it's probably because not ticking all of those boxes, right? So like, say average person listening to this, they've been training for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, and their physique has stalled. They're not seeing the progress with where they want. What do you say to that person? Where are they sort of missing the gap in terms of the progress that they're trying to see?
I think it's the same general thing that happens with nutrition as well. Actually, sleep too. It's kind of a little bit more abstract for sleep, but nutrition, sleep, and training also struggle from similar sort of things. Where nutrition, one of the most obvious things for a lot of people is you think you're eating more or you think you're eating less depending on what the goal is than you actually are. Like your tracking is off and you just don't know that you're not hitting the landmark. And it's that skill of tracking or that skill of portion sizing or macronutrient distribution, like getting your protein, it's just off. And you're like, well, what the hell? I'm doing everything right. Like you literally just don't know that you're not hitting your targets. From a sleep perspective, like I get 12 hours of sleep. Thinking about my kiddo right now. I get 5 hours sleep, whatever it is, and your perception is that you sleep like a rock. It's but it's not. And then you start doing like actual tracking, or you find a way to like measure like how high quality sleep is, and you realize you're getting garbage sleep. Oh, that's a big problem. The quantity versus the quality kind of proposition. And then when you get in the gym, it's a similar idea with like, as you get better at exercise, you have a narrower band of what you can get away with in terms of, say, reps in reserve. And this isn't to say, and this is a big thing that's exploded recently, like the absolute necessity to be close to failure, it's undoubtedly beneficial to you. The closer you can get to failure, the more ideal it is for like hitting a stimulus that's going to probably cause you to grow. But there's a ton of research that backs like, you can be like 3 or 4 reps in reserve and still see quality growth. Like a big thing is like there's a bell curve graph where it's like, clearly reps over here. So 0 to 1 reps in reserve, basically failure, superior to everything else. Like, yeah, do you see how much gains there is in the rest of that graph though? So you can be further away than you think. But the problem is people don't have a calibration on that. They think they're closer to failure than they actually are. And one of the biggest things that I've experienced that helps with that actually came from powerlifting. Um, I would back when that was my kind of preferred style of training, powerlifting, power building, like barbell hypertrophy style. Like I loved it. I thought it was kicking ass. And then I went to my first meet and watched it and saw how hard people tried. And I was like, wow, I bet you I'm like my 1 RM is like probably my 3 RM. And I just don't realize that. So being able to calibrate truly how close to failure you are to get that better sense of stimulation every single workout. Oftentimes having a workout partner that is an absolute psychopath just once. Just have someone that you see them like push themselves to like a nosebleed, like not literally necessarily, but like having that person that helps you realize like, yo, have I been like half-assing it on my sets? That's all you need, just one time, and then you'll kind of have that calibration. So the 3 prongs: the sleep quality versus quantity, nutrition accuracy, and then again accuracy of proximity to failure and getting good calibration for that. Those are the ones. A real easy target is like choose your safe one. Usually like choose like a shortened position exercise. And for I'm not even going to explain that. I'm just choose quad extensions. There it is. Just use quad extensions and like get a mouth guard and bite down and just go until you literally cannot anymore. Not when it burns, when you can't anymore. And like give yourself a 1 second hard contraction in the fully extended knee position to really make sure you're actually completing each rep and take it to failure. Like it grinds to a halt way before it's supposed to. And then that'll give you an idea of like the kind of effort that is a failure based set. You can pull back off of that a little bit. It doesn't have to always be that way, but again, it allows you to kind of understand like, have I been slacking in other places?
Yeah. It's funny, right? Like there's so much knowledge, there's so many things, and then like we came down to effort, protein, and sleep, right? That's what
Yeah.
leads to like the opt and like we talk about this all the time too. So I want to get a little bit in the actually I want to talk about so like the 70% of the people that are, more lifestyle based, how do you
Mhm.
get them to adhere to like the nutrition and like sleep side of things? I know training wise enjoyment and they see some wins, they see some of them getting stronger, whatever happening, right? How do you make sure they stick to some of the nutrition or like the sleep guidelines as well?
It's actually interesting you bring that up because I've been piloting. I've strayed away from doing a lot of the more in-depth coaching that a lot of people like. They'll synergize. They'll do, okay, I do your coaching, I do your nutrition advice,
Hmm.
and whatever else they might tack on. And I've been pretty hesitant towards doing that. And it's not like the cliche, like, it's illegal, which it's not. It depends on what you're providing, but it's more so it's a pain in the ass. And so for anyone that's ever done nutrition coaching, legit for everybody, it's down to like even like meal planning. I don't like this food. I can't. I There's so much detail and so much effort that has to go into like curating someone's diet in a way that they would enjoy. I'm like, I can't do it. Up until recently, I've started to pilot it, and it's exactly as you're sort of describing, where I have in my current clientele list, I have different levels of engagement, different levels of how they prioritize these things. So one person, what we're doing, like everybody's going to get macros of sub capacity because that's the lowest hanging easy one to do. So here's your total calories. Here's the macro split that I think you should do. Cool. Sometimes I just like that's it. I clean my hands of the rest of it, and that's all they need. Other times it's that plus I need you to send me a photo when you have your meal, just as a method of not necessarily like super strict adherence, but just, hey, I need you to make sure you're actually eating. Because what in the lifestyle sort of setting, a lot of the times people struggle to just get their food in. It gets like shoved by the wayside in their schedule. They forget about it. It's too late in the day. And it's like, yo, just I need you to know that I'm watching. And that's it. And then the deepest layer is like actually recommending loose food types. And usually what it comes down to is, hey, what do you like to eat now? Because both in the training setting, like I said earlier, about know what they like and don't necessarily weaponize it, but definitely use it, like leverage it. Hey, what do you already eat? I know how this works. If you were to tell me I eat insert whatever food, I can kind of loosely tailor like it's that much protein, that much carb, that much kind of I can kind of do that loose math in my head. And that's usually all it needs to be to get someone started, just the loose math. And I'm like, okay, if you like those foods already and they're readily available in your home and you're cool with having them regularly, I need you to have this much of that. I need you to, if you're used to one chicken breast per day, maybe like we're gonna bump it to two, easy peasy, and just immediately start going down that rabbit hole with them. Lifestyle, it's on the nutrition side of things. You made mention to one of you, it may have been Manraj, but like, yo, go for a walk, like whatever. Like in our industry, it's step counts. It's you got to track all your numbers. It's step counts. Like that's the phrase that people use. Like, oh yeah, man, in my head as the coach, I know like, okay, let's get them to like 10 to 12,000 steps because that's going to be that much low intensity steady state. It's going to be this good for their fat loss, blah, blah. So, the advice they need to hear, I'm doing that math. They need to hear go for a walk. I'm doing the math on here's the amount of protein that's found in this item that you already eat. I need you to get this much protein on the day that's going to be ideal for your muscle growth. Hey, increase your portion size by 50%. Even that, like I would say it differently than that, but like that's like the sort of filtering process. And usually it comes down to measure the person's level of give a fuck. Um, Most trainers on the internet these days superimpose their goals upon their entire audience or their methodology upon their entire audience. And it's like, my personal methodology within my business is it's a cliche phrase, everybody likes to use it, but I'm going to meet you where you're at, and I'm going to scale the level of engagement or scale the level of service to what would best service you. And like I said with my description earlier, could be macros, could be, yo, just increase your portion size and send me photos. It could be these lower hanging things because they might be happy just feeling better and losing a little bit of weight, and like the old I'm going to fit my old pants. I don't need you to send me progress pictures or a super detailed MyFitnessPal for you to fit your pants. I need us to train hard and eat well and sleep well and go for a walk every once in a while and probably get you into those pants relatively quickly. So that's kind of how I go about it.
It's good looking at the bigger picture, like you just kind of mentioned, because like I know I've gone in this realm and I think that I've had like different phases of it, just because I can consume knowledge and then sometimes I forget to critically think, and I'm just like, oh, this is the way, and then I go through phases of like, oh, this is how you do this, this is how you do this, right? And like sometimes even like right now, I get all excited about because I'm on prep and like carb cycling is working really well,
Mhm.
right? And like I see that working, I'm like, oh, I should just make all clients do carb cycling, low carb, high carb day. But now we're adding another layer to it where they're first of all not even hitting their protein intake on a
Yeah.
consistent basis. So it's like adding that extra layer is not meeting them where they're at. They don't even need that. That's not even the intention, right? And sometimes you would go to the extent of doing everything, set up the meal plan, set up this, set up that, and they're like not sticking to it at all. And you realize after like 4 weeks, if you just tell them, hey, bro, just add a walk and a protein shake after your workout and an apple, and you'll be blessed. And they start seeing results. It's wild how it works, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, everything you just described, it's like as you like carb cycling. I think I just made a post about it today, even, but like there's certain things like cold plunges and ice baths and like cold showers in the morning and all these things that people, it blew up for a while. I'm like, no one's taking away my hot shower. This is a point of bliss in my life. And I will tell you right now, I am disciplined enough to accomplish whatever I need to in life without challenging myself daily with a cold shower, whatever it is, right? That doesn't mean that this isn't beneficial to some people. It means that I am definitely not doing that shit. Carb cycling that you just raised, it's working for you. And it works because there's a mechanism that makes it work.
yeah,
But it's a tool that you can now apply in the right situation that doesn't need to be the only tool that you apply in every situation. It just gives you another lens to look at someone's problem with. And hey, you might benefit from carb cycling. Sick. I've done it. I know what it is. I know how it works. Here's how I'd recommend you do it. Someone else entirely, yo, you're gonna not do that at all. Because if we take away carbs on any given point in time, you might fire my ass. Like you love the carbs. You need something that's more of a
yeah.
long, slow, sustained, like 18 to 20 week slow burn cut where we just kind of slowly titrate out, like because that works too. And it's a matter of knowing what works and knowing that a lot of things work when you adhere to the similar principles at the underlying level and just choose the one that's best for the person.
Yeah. So, okay, say for example, the person is putting in good effort, all right? They are sleeping good, they're getting their protein intake in, they're adhering to the plan, everything is wicked. When do you get in the weeds of things of like the program side of things, right? So when you switch programs, like on a 4 week basis, just for the person to adhere, right? Do you have like different ways they can make progress, or is it always like, okay, add more reps, add more weight, so progression metrics per se, and even
Mhm.
like I don't know if you want to get into this, might be a different topic, but like, do you ever like count sets for an individual? Like
Let's go.
set, because like I recently got it into the again, I'm too influenced when I see like Bax post some shit, right?
Yeah.
And obviously he trains me, so I was asking these deep questions, and he'd be like, "This is point 0.5 set, this is one set because it crosses a joint angle. That means they classify as like a rear delt and an upper back set, right?" So when do you get into that realm of like counting sets per session and then sets per like week and then sets like it's so much.
Yeah.
Like when do you get into that? If you ever have to.
Never once in my entire life. No, it's one of those things where, from a conceptual framework point of
Yeah,
view,
yeah,
makes all the sense in the world, is legit. Let's go. From practical applicability standpoint, most people are not you, bro. They're not
yeah,
that wicked. They're not that adherent. They're not whatever. And then life will happen in some capacity where it's the same idea as me constructing the most ideal meal plan for someone and then them just telling me, I don't like the food you chose. And I'm like, well, I just spent 4 hours in a shopping mall figuring out the ideal way to get you everything you love. And now you hate it. And now I hate myself. It's the same premise there.
yeah,
Not necessarily that I won't have metrics of tracking. And so this is a great sort of concept that I've spoken to on in Prescript and on podcasts before. But with my demographics, it is still heavily skewed towards like the average person, not a competitor necessarily, but it does work for competitors as well. And when I first take someone in, we just funnel them towards a more idealized version of training. And so if you spend any time on the internet whatsoever, if you don't perform, this is like the last slide in the hypertrophy course where I'm just like, in summary, just do this: 2 to 3 sets per exercise, sets of 8 to 12 to maybe 15, 2 to 3 minutes of rest, 1 to 2 frequency per week in terms of muscle groups. And I just go down like the hierarchy of what everybody, all the literature, and then what all the dude bros have like synthesized all together, right? And I'll take somebody, and it really depends on what they actually need to get to that idealized version of training. It starts with absorbing who they are right now in terms of what is their current goal. Yes, that's obviously going to be like the scaffold for everything. But does their grip suck? Does their core suck? Can they move properly? Do they have pain? All these things that are going to be like getting in front of or preventing me from just having them train hard. And what I do is I've described it as just a funneling process where you have the broadest range of traits that you're trying to improve upon. And then slowly, week over week, you're just slowly funneling them towards that one idealized method of training for what their goal happens to be. And I described it loosely before, I believe, but I have the client I was describing that's like, yo, is this even working? And I'm like, don't worry, it's working. But something like you're trying to make, let's go full send on the douchey terminology. We're gonna do clavicular pec hypertrophy. That's our goal right now. You might start not on an incline machine chest press for sets of 8 with 3 minutes of rest, only 2 of them. And if you aren't 0 to 1 RIR, you have failed. No. We're going to start you on a half kneeling landmine press, 2 to 3 sets of 12, probably 12 to 15, like 1 to 1.5 minutes of rest, and a tempo where you're going to be in full protraction at lockout for a good 2 seconds, eccentric control for 2 seconds, basically just hold it there with muscle tension for one, and then perform the concentric normally. And that sounds really far away from what I described as the quote unquote ideal hypertrophy parameter. And that's by design because it still targets the tissue. That clavicular, your upper chest, still hits the upper chest, but it's in a way that's going to literally reinforce every potential thing that could be a rate limiter, a bottleneck to your success long term. If you have no muscular endurance, it's going to hit that. If you have no shoulder stability or mobility, it's going to hit those things. Over a long period of time, it's going to help expose that new client to what is real effort. Because early, it's effort by virtue of this burns, this sucks. Can I be disciplined with staying in the right position and doing the prescribed amount of tempo or time in those positions? Week over week, though, that 2 to 3 sets of 12 to 15 with a tempo, it gets shaved down. That tempo goes from maybe 2 second pause, 2 second eccentric, 1 1 or whatever, to we're going to do 1 second in the protracted, 2 second eccentric, 1 1. The next week, we shave off another second, all the way until it becomes basically your normal standard issue like tempo. As we're going, it might start at an RPE of 7 or 8, and then week over week, one of those things might change, many of them might change, but it's going to slowly bump up to like end of set RPE is 8 or 9. The rep count comes down from 15 to 12 to 10 to 8, and all of these things are slowly over the course of 6 to 8 weeks, maybe. That same exercise, they've developed mastery in it, they've reinforced all potential bottlenecks, and they've learned how to train really hard. Then it converts to incline cable chest press, which sounds a lot like actually training for hypertrophy for the upper chest. And we start that process all over again. The parameters might not go so deep down the rabbit hole of challenging everything because you've built them up quite a lot, but it might be like, okay, it's a cable, you need to learn the movement. We're going to do 3x12, and we're going to do tempo of 2 second eccentric, 1 second pause in the hole, and then everything else is normal. RPE 8, 1.5 to 2 minutes of rest. Do that. And then you just start the process and you shave them back down again. Apply that across the board. And the first 4 to 6 weeks is a giant pain in their ass. But then they come out of that first 4 to 6 weeks invincible. And I could just be like, all right, incline chest press machine, you're going to do 2 sets of 8 with 3 minutes of rest, RPE 9, maybe 10. If you fuck it up and do a 10, I ain't mad about it. And that'd be that. It's basically taking them from a state of hitting and making sure all bottlenecks that could possibly exist no longer exist, and then streamlining the volume down to peak stimulus and maximizing recovery. So it could be 2 sets per exercise. And all the way through, it's a general framework. I'm not tracking sets. I'm not really going too deep down the rabbit hole of like partial, like range of motion equals this is a set or half a set for my rear delts or anything like that. because most of the time it's not going to be too impactful. Like that layer is not going to be too impactful for my clientele base, but the general framework of probably higher sets or higher volume, higher repetition sets with a lot of constraints involved, funneling towards that more idealized number with way less volume because they know how to train harder and they can strike that stimulus a lot more effectively. That's more so the framework.
That makes a lot of sense. So say for example, I'm like the clientele.
Yeah.
So would the counting sets come into play at all? Or
No, no.
no? Okay.
I would look. I mean, no, actually, no. I fucking lied because I had a
Yeah.
bodybuilding client and
Yeah.
she won real well, and I didn't do any of that shit. It's more a
Nice.
matter of because, like, again, in my opinion, at
Yeah.
least at the level I'm at, this is not me saying I'm an IFBB pro fucking
Yeah. Yeah.
coach or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah.
But the level that I'm at, the clientele that I wish to serve, for the most part, those are details that are going to skew the real things that matter. And you mentioned it earlier. Are you trying real hard? Is there effort? Are you
Yeah.
getting your protein? Are you getting your sleep? Those kind of things.
Yeah.
Because it's a comment that I've left in many labs, in podcasts, and discussions before. But a lot of these finer details, they're important when they're important, but most people apply them when globally, just all the time. And it can be a mess for the coach to try to track. It can be if the client is aware of them, it can be anxiety inducing for them because they're already trying to manage, in this example, say a bodybuilding client, they're already managing the chaos of a prep. Like that that experience gets rough because they're dieting down at the same time. They're trying to peak for a performance, learning to pose, the whole thing. So the less they can think and the more they can just do, the better. And at the end of the day, there's going to be all the confounding variables. Like if you were to go on to phrase this to James Mack, because he's my like canary down the coal mine for bodybuilding. I'm like, hey man, in your opinion, if we lined up everyone on the Olympia stage, is there, and this is when like optimality was peaking and everybody was like the most finite angle to my pull down, I need to hit that or else I'll make no gains. I was like, if you lined up everybody on the Olympia stage, could you just by looking at them tell me their training protocol, their set and rep schemes, their exercise select? Like, no, you're looking at the developed muscle at the end of the day, and there's more than one route to get there. So a lot of these things are important when they're important, but more so it's like the more grand metrics of recovery that you can track, and it kind of informs you if you're doing too much or if you need to pull back. Um, that's kind of my perspective on it. I have yet to find a time where it's relevant and we can kind of look at the highest of the high end bodybuilders. Not that we're not trying to improve things, obviously, but you see a lot of crazy shit that works that shouldn't,
Yeah.
or like it's suboptimal, or we can apply all these different lenses of mathematics, and it's like in theory it works, in practice does it actually matter?
And like it's funny, like we kind of know that, but you're saying it, so now it's about, bro, what do you want, bro? It's good. Just keep pawing me the whole time. Oh, so it validates because you obviously like say you have extensive knowledge background, right? Hypertrophy course, you teach at prescript, you have the masters, you have all these knowledge, I guess credibility per se, and 15 years in training, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've been training people for a minute, and now you like have coaches that listen to you, right? So, and obviously someone has one body. So you're saying effort, sleep, and protein, right? Which is again, if those three things are consistent, people are going to get results. Sick, agree? Yeah.
I agree. And like the another way of like sort of calming the nerves of everybody, it's the internet thing is to be afraid of average or to not want to die leaving something on the table. And that's great. That's a lot of pressure on you to live your entire life like that. But from a physiology standpoint, maintenance of the tissue that you have is significantly easier than gaining new tissue. And as you get further down the rabbit hole of your training age, it gets harder and harder to accrue new tissue, period. The maintenance value is still there. It's still way easier to maintain no matter what. So accounting for life stress, for changes in your career, lifestyle, the whole thing, you could have a bad day, bad sleep, whatever, knowing that you're aiming for this sort of alpha principle of work real hard on any session using like say an RPE or an RIR sort of methodology to like shove you towards high levels of effort, get your sleep and stress management and your protein as like the overarching principles, which I hope doesn't sound too earth shattering. It's just, again, reinforcing those things. But as you get deeper down the training age rabbit hole, it's harder and harder to grow new muscle. And at all times, the growth of appreciable tissue takes a long period of time. The amount of time you'd have to string together this flawless programming, nutrition, recovery, the whole thing, to actually see it make a difference. Like the phrase like net growth or a delta, like the difference between one thing or another at the end of the day, between if you were to scale it to, try real hard. This isn't to diminish, like, have intelligent programming, like don't be lazy with your programming, but like try real hard, recover real hard, keep doing that for the rest of your life, versus let's go all the way down the nitty gritty rabbit hole and be super anxious at all times over the smallest degree of detail. What is the delta difference, especially in someone that's well trained, between do it effectively, try real hard, eat your protein, be consistent forever, versus I did 0.5 more sets of rear delts this week. I think I just fucked up my program. Like, no, man, like the degree, the chip, the grain of sand that you either added or subtracted is imperceivable in the long run. They're both going to accomplish relative progress. It's a matter of what is the right thing for the right person's mentality. And I've been on the crusade lately. Like, it's just been very like top of mind to me, but the average person struggles real hard with training and body dysmorphia and the psychology behind it. And so does everybody else. And if we can claw back like any of these exposure points to like over fixation on tracking, over fixation on the minutia that are going to cause more stressors for even a high level athlete, those stressors, like I said about other things prior, are probably going to be a net negative relative to the gain of being like, I tracked every set down to the 0.5 that I didn't even know existed up until this point. Like, you get what I mean? Like, what is the net gain versus net negative?
No, honestly, it was a sick reminder for me. I think I've been too into the rabbit hole at times too. So it's
If it makes you look at your body differently, you're down the rabbit
yeah,
hole too far. Because that's
yeah,
the thing that, like,
100%. Yeah,
most people have they've made sick gains, but it's like they start to literally, and it's a dysmorphic line of thought. It's a
yeah,
dysmorphic perception. It's like,
yeah,
fuck, I missed this part of my workout, or I think I dogged it and there was 2 RIR, and now you look at your body like you just deflated. It's
yeah,
it's the old meme, the old adage of like, oh, I got sick, took 3 days off the gym, lost all my gains. It's like that. It's just that blown up.
yeah. We could do a whole podcast on just like there's so many little statements that we were talking about before that you post. One of them was like suffering is not success, or like failed program does not mean like failed lack of progress does not mean a failed program, things like that. I think that could be a whole podcast, every single topic, man, right? Because there's so many
Yeah.
little ones, and even this is right here, like the rabbit hole thing,
Mm-hmm.
where we go into it all the time. And I think sometimes, I know I sometimes fall in this trap, but I kind of stay away from it. It's like you can do certain things to look like you're disciplined on Instagram, right? But
Yeah.
like it's obsessiveness in like an unhealthy manner. Like you're just doing shit that's like unnecessary. No one really actually cares. They like scroll past everything. No one, it's just in your head, right? You're like, oh,
Yeah.
look how disciplined I am, right? How hardcore I am, kind of thing. So you're like suffering per se, but it's not really. You don't have to do any of that shit. You can just be relaxed, and you'll probably make way more gains,
I
right?
think most people forgot that social media is social media. And it's
Yeah,
like, it's all projection. It's a literal personal journal. No matter how much people try to make it not seem that way, it's a personal journal. Like whatever you guys post, whatever I post, it's all of my writing is projection. It's what I'm currently going through or what I'm currently thinking. That's why I can write to it. And so the suffering is not success thing. It's like, oh, I have been struggling trying to balance like this transition between being full-time work versus, oh, I'm trying to do full-time work and full-time stay-at-home dad at the same time, and slowly figuring out that balance and like scaling things down so I can like survive again, and coming to the realization that the degree to which I struggle or suffer is not necessarily a one-to-one correlate of success. And I used to think that all the time when I was a good life trainer. I was like, the only time I can almost guarantee my success, and I would be reinforced because usually I would sign a client or something would go my way when I would, is when I'm running to the ground. I'm working every single hour. I'm struggling. I'm dying on my feet, the whole thing. But then something good happens. And it's like, it's a strong correlation because I worked hard, but it's not like me being in pain or me putting myself in this self-imposed state of suffering. It doesn't, it's not what caused the thing to happen. It just happened to be associated with it. And so I think you brought it up before we started recording, but like people go through preps, which is the height of privilege. Like you're voluntarily starving yourself to build tissue on a body that is resisting you building tissue on said body. Like bodybuilding is not the way your body wants to exist. It's highly laborious for putting it on and also maintaining it. it's a completely luxury status. And people will put themselves in the state of, I'm going to now just project my suffering, which they are. It's not to say they're not. It is a personal challenge for sure, but it's a self-imposed one. And then when it starts to have a negative net effect on the quality of life or the psychology long term, it's like, why are we doing this? What is the purpose for my $5 trophy or a pro card even that says you're a pro at suffering effectively? Like, you worked real hard, not diminishing that, but it's like, if it's something that you are repeatedly having to force yourself into for a voluntary process, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Now that the word you mentioned was luxury, I think just reframing it in that word, it makes everything kind of simplified. It's like, yo, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things we get to do, like, bro, like 6 p.m. on a Friday, doing a podcast about muscles. Like, it's pretty sick. Right? No, I'm just saying it's a luxury, right? So like
Uh,
all these little things, and like we talk about technically outside looking in, it's like this is work. I should take a thing. I should take a screenshot. Like our podcast.
yeah.
Hashtag work, right? But still
Hashtag
like think
working.
hashtag working, right? I'll do it right now. There you go. But still, it's not suffering, right? It's luxury. So I think that's a good reframe. And that's a good
Yeah.
I know you're a dad, bro. So I don't know if you have daddy duties, but I think we're
Everybody went
cool
down
with it.
for a nap when we started. We're good. Like, whatever you
Good.
want. We could be good here. We can do another one. We can keep going. It's up to you. Everybody's
Yeah.
napping. I'm free.
I think breaking it on like specific topics might be more fun. Because this
Sure.
one was a nice intro to Eric, right? Now people understand he's just a bro, but he's just a smart bro, right? Because stamp trying to get Jack approval.
Let's go.
Let's go. Any other Gags, Manraj, questions, thoughts? Any last words? Any
You can go.
No, I don't
no?
really have anything to say. No.
Okay.
I got a question.
Oh,
When it comes to, you mentioned you're like, say you're taking a client through a program, you're putting them all through all this stuff, you're like training, nutrition, everything is dialed in. They come to you. I think you mentioned at one point, they're like, yo, is this working? Right? What are some indicators of like for you to know that it's working, and then for you to also be able to show them that what they're doing is working? What are sort of the indicators of progress you'd say that you'd kind of show back in?
This is a wild one because indicators of objective progress is not what people give a shit about most of the time. You can like at least in the gen pop kind of space, and like when I mean that, I mean it's why I'm so on my like horse writing and trying to like discuss things about like dysmorphic thought or like how people perceive themselves, because this is like the Adonis complex for men, the just general like dysmorphic, like the He-Man or the Conan the Barbarian, whatever the hell dating of myself I'm doing, like, yo, none of us look like that, no, we all want to look like that, and I'll never be adequate unless whatever, and then you literally look in the mirror and you feel small, whatever it is, right? All of those things, you can make objective progress, and it doesn't matter if you don't feel good about the way you look. And like that's the thing to revisit at all times, is like getting people to understand what a real human body looks like. When you're making progress, that's sick, and this is something that should be celebrated. But what most of the time a trainer will do is, we'll do BMI, we'll do weigh-ins, we'll do photos. Maybe photos are, it's a dicey one because it's a very effective one, because it's like, yo, look at you then, look at you now. And it helps to give a third party perspective on like outside looking in, this is what you look at. Or people could get really, again, they could get weird about photos as well. It's like training someone and then doing nutrition as well. Nutrition could be a slippery slope for eating disorders or disordered eating or just hyperfixation. So it's on a per person basis. But this is to say, like, most of the time, it's one of those weird intangible ones that helps someone realize that, oh, they've made the progress. Because the guy that I'm working with right now is the archetype. Double knee tendinopathies, his shoulder labrum's all janky, and we get him doing stuff where it's incredibly difficult, say for him to drive hip internal rotation, like doing an RDL usually would cause knee pain. And I'm like, well, that's weird because your knee doesn't move during an RDL. That's how limited his mobility is. And we can deep dive that one on another podcast if we need to. And so everything's sort of centered around, let's get him out of pain, which doesn't necessarily feel like training hard for hypertrophy in this example. But one day, soon, probably today, he'll wake up and realize, as I put him through now a deeper range of motion on anything like a squat pattern, oh, his knees don't hurt. And it's like the change in the load of X is something I might present to him as we're making progress. But the real thing that matters is, oh shit, my knees don't hurt anymore. Or I just bent down to pick up my kid and I didn't have my horrible SI pain as I normally would. or I fit into the clothes, insert whatever, like those kind of things, like literally pulling it back to like what the average person sort of thinks about. Because we again superimpose all these metrics for bodybuilding upon everybody, which from a coaching perspective helps with tracking metrics so that we know that we're being effective, but it has to be something that's meaningful to the person. So in terms of like what I would track for each person, it's kind of how I look at nutrition too. The spreadsheeting, the programming, if you'll if you've done it long enough, it kind of tells you all the things without ever having to do the math. And then if you really want to one day, you can do the math and be like, I did this much tonnage, I did this much load. But if we're training hard anyways, RPE 9, 3 by 10 this week, RPE 9, 3 by 8 next week. Objectively, if we're doing it right over the course of at least a couple weeks, that should mean you did more tonnage. Like the math should math itself eventually. But it's more so what is the most meaningful metric, be it tangible or intangible for this person, and scaling it to that. Because the amount of times, as you phrased, I've had people like, yo, is this even working? And I'm like, what do you mean? We're kicking ass, only to realize like I am not paying attention to the thing that they were caring about when we first started.
That is like I got reminded of that exact same thing, I think like couple 3 4 days ago by a client. In the sense like he was like, yo, bro, can you also tell me like what I'm doing right? And in like
Yeah.
form feedback videos, right? Like I got so fixated on like, oh, push your hips back, keep the knees bent, knee over your ankle, so like your for your RDLs, or like foot pressure into the ground or whatever, all these little things. He's like, bro, am I doing anything right? I'm like, oh yeah, bro, you're killing it. You're killing this movement, whatever. So now I started positively reinforcing certain things as well. Again, if they're actually doing it right, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing something good, tell them. Because sometimes like I've noticed now that guy, he's so much more engaged in the progress. Because he's just like, oh shit, like I'm making gains here. I never got compliments from this guy. Now he's like saying nice things to me. This is awesome. So now he's
Yeah.
much more engaged in the whole process. Just by the biggest thing is like they also need validation that they're actually making progress, right? So sometimes just telling them it's like, yo, you're actually killing it in
And then
certain movements, right? So
sometimes you scale someone back where they don't feel like their perception of what hard work or progress is already preset. So you scale them to what they need and they feel like they're not working hard. So you have to make sure they realize what is actually happening that's beneficial to them, or they feel like they're working super hard and all they're receiving is the feedback, like the high quality feedback that you're giving them, which
yeah,
in certain contexts makes them feel like, oh, I'm doing everything wrong. Like I'm not going anywhere. This guy always has something to say to me. So
yeah.
yeah, we're trying to perfect it, but hey, don't remember you're kicking ass. Like just always the compliment sandwich or whatever.
Yeah. And that's how humans are, right? We need some positive reinforcement. Like the suffering at Good Life, you get a client, it's like, oh shit, I'll do this again. Get some
Exactly.
reinforcement, or we won't do it, right? So the clients won't keep doing it. And they're like, oh shit, apparently every week I suck at this movement. Why should I do this? Right? So
Yeah, I'm just
I
not getting
actually
it.
I had a conversation with Bax because every week you'd be like, bro, your rib cage is moving. Or your rib cage is not moving, you're moving to the hips. I'm like, bro, I don't know fuck where my rib cage is. I actually sent him a voice note. I'm like, yo, where's my rib cage, bro? It looks like
Yeah.
every week I don't move my rib cage, right? So you send me a video or whatever, but like it's the same thing with our clients. We keep telling them you're not doing this right, this right. Eventually, they're not gonna adhere to the thing because they're like, oh, apparently I'm not doing anything right. And so, but yeah, okay. I learned that from Vibes too. He needs positive reinforcement all the time. So
Right.
we're all like, but yeah, I think that's a good. Actually, before we end off, where can people find you, Eric? And with your coaching, all that stuff on Instagram, give us the sauce. What's the handle and everything?
Yeah, primarily I exist on Instagram. I refuse any other platform at this stage just because I don't have time or patience. But Instagram at Eric Bugera is my handle. Basically, that's where you'll find any of the previous works I've done through Prescript. It's all linked through the same account, that kind of stuff. So primarily I offer online programming services and in person. So if you're local Winnipeg, like I'll do one-off sessions here and there depending on scheduling. But one-off consultations online as well that we kind of go back and forth on an individual basis. There's no like Calendly links anymore just because my life is too chaotic, but one-to-one consults, one-to-one customized programming, stuff like that. Those are the primary ways. But yeah, Instagram is probably the major way. My link to my website is there as well, but it's like just do the Instagram thing and you'll find everything.
Sick. You dancing with your kid on TikTok would kill, bro, if you ever took that route, but it's fine.
Dude, I would
I know, I know.
fucking
Okay.
die. I can't with TikTok.
Okay, but yeah, that's the podcast. Thank you guys. That was hopefully people took away some knowledge. And again, whoever's watching, right? All the great people that are watching, please at least share with one person. It goes a long way, right? If it helps, share so the other person can also get jacked. Don't steal all the gains yourself. And yeah, happy gains. Okay,
Thanks, guys.
stop.